Welcome, Lee here from Play Guitar Academy. Are you sick and tired of being a beginner, but the YouTube learning method, it keeps you stuck and confused about how to finally make it to the intermediate level? Today, I'm going to show you what to work on with examples to finally make it to first stage intermediate blues guitar. But before we start the lesson, intermediate guitar players, they need to learn to open up the entire fretboard and stop playing in just one or two patterns. Click the link in the description. You can get my free Big 4 scale pattern worksheet, and you can leave beginner behind and start feeling comfortable playing all over the fretboard. Here in part 1, we're going to be doing the beginner roundup. First off, if you want to move forward, you need to make sure you're not missing any fundamental skills that a beginner should know. At the end of the beginner stage, the beginner blues guitar stage, you should know all of your open position chords. Next, you should know your basic strumming with upstrokes and downstrokes. Next, you should know the form of the 12-bar blues. Next, you should know the difference between a straight beat and a shuffle beat. And then finally, you should know some easy songs that you can play from beginning to end. Once you can do these things, you are ready to move ahead to the first level of intermediate guitar. So I have something for you today. What I've done is I've done a 12-bar blues with some open position chords and done these in a way that matches the shuffle pattern that's played in the backing track. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the chords and we're going to go through the rhythms, and then you can play along with me right at the end of part 1. So let's take a look at our first chord. The first chord is an E7. Now this looks just like a regular E major chord here, and you can look at the tab above to figure this out, but it's super easy. If you play a regular E major chord, strumming all the strings, you remove your third finger from that. So that way that D string is open. That adds a D note to your E7 chord, and that is the flat 7, the dominant 7th. If you strum that, you notice it's got a little something else in there. Right? It's got a little rub to it. The next chord we're going to play is an A7 chord in open position. A7th chord, we're going to borrow the regular A that you've already learned how to play, right? We're going to use our first finger across there, and we're going to take our third finger or second finger. Some people use either one. I use the third. And we're going to put our third finger on the high E string on the 3rd fret. That puts the flat 7th in A, this G note, on the top, so you really notice it. Stevie Ray Vaughan used this all the time. It's a very distinctive sound here. But this is called the 4 chord in blues. So the 1 chord is E7 in the key of E, and the 4 chord would be A7. In this instance, we're going to go to what's called a quick 4. We go in the second measure, we go to right to the 4 chord, the A7, and then back for 2 measures back to the E7 chord. Then finally, we go through the A7 again for 2 more measures, back to the E7 for 2 more measures. Then we have our 5 chord. This is called a B7th chord. Most likely as a beginner, you've had this chord. This is a very common beginner chord, and it works great for E blues. It sits right here in open position, has a really nice sound. We're basically making a little triangle here. We've got our second finger on the 2nd fret of the A, first finger on the 1st fret of the D, third finger tucked underneath on the 2nd fret of the G, open B string, and then pinky on the 2nd fret of the high E string. Put all these together in the form of the 12-bar blues, and we use this rhythm. We're going to play an 8th note on beat 1 with a rest at the end of beat 1 and the beginning of beat 2. So our next time we strum this chord, it's going to be on the and of 2. So let's take a listen here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, and. That's the rhythm that we're going to use through this entire chord progression. And let's go ahead and see if you can play along with me right now. hope you had fun playing along with me with that one. If you struggle with this and you are missing the skills needed to move forward, please see me over at Play Guitar Academy. I have a roadmap of courses that will get you right where you need to be. Here in part 2, if you're going to move on to first stage intermediate in blues guitar, it's definitely bar chords and seventh chords you're going to need to master. You're going to need them to play the majority of blues standards. So let's take a look at some bar chords that you'll find in the blues. We're going to be talking about dominant seventh chords mainly here. So the first chord we're going to use in this example is an E7 bar chord up high. Now we played it in open position here. But where we're going to play this now is up at the 7th fret. It's going to look like an A chord, like you were playing it in open position. It was just moved up. And the rule when you move chords up is if you move your fingers up, you also have to move the open strings that you would play up the same amount. So here we have our A chord. We're going to move this up to the 9th fret. We're going to need that A string to move up to the 7th fret. So it's 2 frets behind what's played. Now that's an E major chord. We don't want E major. We want this to be a dominant chord, which means we want a flat 7 in there. How do you get that? You find one of the E's. We have 2 in this chord. And you take one of them and lower it 2 frets. Put that into the chord and you've got your dominant E. It's really nice. You'll see it written as E7. But you're supposed to know that means a flat 7th, a dominant 7th there. So that's the first one we're going to use. Then the next one we're going to use is down at the 5th fret. And this is going to look just like that open E chord that we played earlier, but moved up. So we're going to take your 2 fingers here, your 3rd finger on the D string at the 7th fret, and then you skip string. Your 2nd finger is going to be on the 6th fret of the G string, and then your 1st finger goes across all the strings at the 5th fret. Just like this one down here. And this is an A 7th chord. This is our what's called the 4 chord. When you hear me say that in blues, the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and 5 chord, that has to do with the degree of the scale note that the chord is based on. So in the key of E, E is the first note, that would be the 1 chord. In the key of E, A is the 4th note. So that will be the 4 chord. And then in the key of E, B, which is the same chord we just played up 2 frets, that will be the 5 chord. Here we are, part 3. This is the next big step we need to move from beginner to the first level intermediate player. And that is playing some single notes, minor pentatonic scales, and some blues scales as well too. Now, the big problem with most people is that they learn one of those scale patterns. You're going to learn the box scale, the 1-4, 1-3, 1-3, 1-3, 1-4, 1-4. I'm sure you've seen it a million different places. And people learn that and they get stuck there. It's a very, very, very common problem. There's people that I know that learn that and they've stayed there for 20, 30 years. It's fun. It's easy to play, but this is like quicksand. Some go in, they learn the scale pattern and they never come out. This right now, this is a stage where you need to put in a little more effort to learn the rest of the patterns on the guitar. This is a system that works. As you go through these patterns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they repeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s forever this way. And it goes the same way backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 this way. If you know the 5 scale patterns, and just think of all the things that you've had to memorize in your life, and you can't even remember them. These scale patterns are going to stay with you your entire life. I play them every single day. I've been playing them since around 1985. What we're going to be doing is I've got a solo for you that I've created, and we start low in the key of E, and we use the minor pentatonic and some of the blues scale patterns, and we get higher and higher and higher as we go through the scale, just using the top strings. So instead of going across just in one pattern, we're going through all of the different patterns. This is a very good exercise to get you really out of your comfort zone and see all of the great sounds that you can get by leaving pattern 1 and going into some cool places on the guitar. So let's take a look at this first lick. We're going to start using minor pentatonic pattern 1. It's an open position, and the top 2 strings of that are the notes that we're going to use. Open 3 on the B and high E strings. That's a B to D and E to G. We're going to use different combinations of those notes to come up with a really nice lick. And here's what it sounds like. 1. Just going up to the highest note, coming back, E to D, and then G back to E. At that point, we're already in the A7th chord. So it starts off in E, and then right here, over the A. Sounds nice over both chords. Let's move to the next lick here. The next lick that we have is up pattern 2, and we're going to use the top 2 strings again from pattern 2. We're also going to add an extra note in here. You're going to really enjoy that as well too. So our first note is the 5th fret on the B string. Now that's an E, that's our root note, that's our strong note. And we're going to go up the scale pattern. 5 here, we're going to go to the 3rd fret on the E string, that's a G note. Then the 5th fret on that same string, that's an A. But look at this, we have a 6. 1/2 step higher than that. That's not in our minor pentatonic. What is that? That's the blue note. That's where you go from the 4th to a sharp 4 to a 5. We add a note in between the 4th and 5th. And in this position, it's the highest note. We can go up 1/2 step higher, and then we work our way back down. 5, 3, and then 5 on the B string. It sounds like this. And to finish it all off, we're going to have a 1/2 step bend on the 3rd fret of the high E string. In the 3rd lick here, we're going to start on the 8th fret of the B string, and we're going to bend up a full step. So that's from a G going to an A, right? So we're bending up to the note that's the root note of the chord that's currently playing at the time. We have an A7 that's playing. And then we're going to go back down the pattern 3. So we're going back to, we have the 5th fret on the high E string, 8th fret on the B string, 5th fret on the B string. Now we do something pretty interesting here. We play a note from the chord that's not in the scale. This is a note that's the major 3rd of the chord. This is the 6th fret of the G string. I added this so you could get a little bit of chord tone targeting under your belt as a 1st level intermediate guitar player. It's a really interesting sound. I'm sure you'll like it. You hear that? How it matches that note. We're getting a little ear training early on here. And now we're going to go back to that. Remember that blue note that we played? It was on the 6th fret of the high E string. Well, we're going to use it in a line. We're going to go all the way up to the 7th fret of the high E string and chromatically, meaning step by step, work our way down to the 5th fret. So that's a strong note, the 5th. Our blue note, this is our added note that we put in there to give a little tension, and then to our 4th degree here. And then we end this lick with a bend on the 8th fret of the B string. In our 4th lick in this example, we're going to go to E minor pentatonic pattern 4. We're going to start with the highest note in that pattern, which is the 10th fret. That's our D note, and we're going to come back down the scale. So D goes to B, that's at the 7th fret, and then we have 2 10s on the B string. 2 A's back up to the B, and now we're going to do the minor 3rd, that's the 8th fret on the B string, and then the root note, the 9th fret on the G string. And we will end this lick off with the 8th fret on the B string. So for our 5th lick, we're going to be using pattern 5. You see how this is working? Each lick moves up a pattern. So put your 3rd finger on the 12th fret of the B string, and we're going to go up this pattern. So next is your 1st finger on the 10th fret of the high E to the 12th fret of the high E. That's your E note, back to the D on the 10th fret, and then back to the B on the 12th fret. 1. The 6th lick over this chord progression, we've made it finally back up to pattern 1, and we're going to start off with a bend at the 15th fret. A full step bend, and then we're going to follow that with the 12th fret on the high E string. So this is a D bending up to E, and then the E itself afterwards. Then we're going to go back down to the 15th fret on the B, back to the 12th fret, and then we'll do the same thing on the high string, 15th fret, that's our G note, and going back to the E note. So to finish this off, we're going to go up to pattern 2, but up high here. Go ahead and put your 3rd finger on the 17th fret of the B string. That's our E, that's our root note, and then we're going to go up the scale. Our G is the 15th on the high E string, then the 17th, that's our A note on the high E string. But this time we're going to bend a full step up to that B. And then back to release that and back to the 17th fret, back to the 15th fret. We're working our way down. All of this has been over an E chord. But right here on our last note is where we hit that B7, the turnaround chord. And we're going to reflect that in our solo. So far we have. Now to finish this off, I'm going to skip a string and put my 2nd finger on the 16th fret of the G string. And that gives us the B, which is the root note of this B7 chord that we've been playing. Thanks for playing along with me today, and I hope you feel better about moving from beginner to first stage intermediate blues guitar player. And thanks to all of our Academy members over at playguitaracademy.com who are tearing into the tab and guitar pro files from this lesson right now. And don't forget to grab that Big 4 scale pattern worksheet. And as always, let me know what you think in the comments. Have a great practice, and I'll see you in the next video.